Hello and welcome back to World Leaderboard, the podcast where we rank every politician to tell you who's winning and losing each week. This week, I'm joined by Rory.
Hello.
Georgina.
Hello.
And Zach.
Hello.
Whoa.
You guys sound very excited there.
Two-phase hello. Hello. As always, we're going to be spending this episode running through the various people we think have won and lost this week in politics. And as we do that, we'll be shuffling them around our leaderboard. This is how things currently stand, but we'll be moving at least 7 people around on the board as the episode goes on. So this will look very different by the end. One thing worth noting is the Madagascan president, dead at the bottom of the board there. He has an axe hanging over his head, which means that previously we decided that if he was removed from office, he would also be removed from our list. We put him on
notice.
We put him on notice
yeah.
saying, you're looking dodgy. He has been removed from office, but we're going to save purging him from the list for next week, because next week, as our World Leaderboard Halloween special, we're going to be purging all over the place. We're going to be removing all kinds of people from the board.
The Grim Reaper is coming.
The Grim Reaper is coming, absolutely. That axe is being changed into a scythe, and no one is safe, apart from him for one more week. But he's on double notice now. With that being said, let's jump into it and let's talk about our winners this week. Zach, let's start with you. Who is your winner this week?
My winner of the week, and I feel a bit guilty doing it because he's already at the very, very top of the board, but it is going to be China's President Xi Jinping. I think there are basically 2 reasons that he's going up. The first is that there was a mini escalation in that ongoing US-China trade war a couple of weeks ago. I think people probably already know about it. It was the rare earths thing. Mm-hmm. So basically, America, or some part of the American government, introduced new export controls that would have actually affected quite a lot of Chinese companies. They were basically expanding sanctions from sort of big Chinese state-owned companies to lots of smaller Chinese companies that are partially owned by those big state-owned companies, right? And that would have had a pretty dramatic effect. Anyway, China reacted by basically threatening new export controls on rare earth elements, which are those sort of, funky little elements that China sort of dominates that industry, and they go into most modern technologies, and no one else can really supply them in the same way. And that does seem to have been enough to sort of spook the Americans. I think you got Trump threatening to reimpose another 100% tariff, but I think everyone already knows it's not going to happen. I think the most interesting thing about this whole story is that Trump, a couple of days ago, put out a Truth Social post where he basically said, "This is what I want from China," right? And it was basically 2 things, and they were so minimal. He said, 1, stop messing around with rare earth controls, which is like fair enough, but also I think in a way a tacit admission that the US probably isn't going to be able to sort or create a domestic rare earth industry in time. And the second thing was about soybeans. He said, "Can you start buying our soybeans again?" And I think we just have to
It's always about beans with this guy.
He's obsessed with the soybeans, but I think we just have to gently note quite how dramatically scaled down Trump's China ambitions are now, right? Originally we were talking about a massive restructuring the global trading order and all that sort of shenanigans, and now it is, please can we keep buying your rare earths, and please can you buy our soybeans? Well,
and also the rare earths, that only became a point of tension because of the trade escalation, right? Yeah. The reason that they're restricting the rare earths is in reaction to Trump's trade war. So essentially, it's just, can we go back to normal, but please take these beans?
And also, by the way, the soybeans are back to normal because the Chinese used to buy more soybeans. It's please, can you keep buying the soybeans? I think all the signs are, and I think I'm sort of disappointed myself for not realizing this earlier, is that I think we are really headed towards something quite similar to what happened in Trump's first term, which is when we got what's called phase 1 trade deal, which basically nothing really changed apart from the fact that the Chinese agreed to certain nominal stuff about currency manipulation, but didn't really do anything. Basically agreed to buy some American energy and some American soybeans. And that worked fine from Trump's perspective, right? Because that's a sort of tangible thing that the electorate, and especially genuinely soybean farmers in the US, will appreciate. And the Chinese love it as well because nothing really changes. They get to continue running their massive trade surpluses. They get to continue being the sort of factory of the world, and everyone get to continue sort of keeping the rest of the world dependent on various Chinese manufacturers. And so I do think that Trump's insistence on soybeans and that Truth Social post suggests that we are heading in a very similar direction to the trade deal agreed in the first term. And I've got to say that is absolutely great from China's perspective. I think they would have been worrying a couple of months ago that, you know, maybe we're going to see some more substantial demands, re the trade surplus, which would have been hard for China to accommodate. Yeah, and I think that actually, if a phase one trade deal suits both parties, essentially, I think that is where we're heading, where there's basically just some sort of purchase agreements and then some other froth, but it's essentially just buy soybeans and energy from us. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there's been rumors.
Just the first thing?
Yeah, I was pretty soybean heavy. I'm going to have something a bit more substantial.
Fine.
Yeah,
Need a bigger meal than just beans. We're getting to the main course now.
These are the carbs, and this is the mainly about this national security reviews. Yeah, it's not great gags, but the national security review. There have been reports over the past couple of weeks that the upcoming US national security review is basically going to say, for the first time in maybe like a decade or so, probably more, that China is no longer really America's strategic priority, right? And that's really interesting because China has sort of been America's strategic priority since at least Obama, who talked about being the first sort of Indo-Pacific president and all that sort of shenanigans. And there is a tension in the Trump administration at the moment between basically the sort of like, not isolationists, but the people who think that US should focus on like its near abroad, its sphere of influence. You should focus on Venezuela, Colombia, Mexico, Canada, Greenland, and the people who still think that there is a superpower competition going on with China and that they should focus on that, right? The Elbridge Colby types who say that we need to de-extricate from Ukraine and the Middle East because we need to focus our resources on China. And I do think that basically the fact that Trump has watered down his demands, re the trade war, and the fact that he's taking such an aggressive posture towards, again, say Venezuela and now Colombia, but also proving so willing to interfere in Argentina, right, on behalf of Milei, just such sort of interventionist policy in the Americas suggests that that is the direction we're heading in. And again, China will be very happy with that outcome, right? If America sort of withdraws and gives up on Taiwan, which I know is a sort of script that Georgia did on a while ago, and loses interest in Japan, South Korea, all that sort of thing, China will be very happy with that. That'll give it sort of freedom of action in its own quote unquote sphere of influence, at least as the CCP see it. And yeah, again, I think in some sense, those sorts of arrangements suit both parties, right?
Yeah.
Trump quite likes being able to bully his weaker American neighbors, and China quite likes to be the superpower in the sort of Asia Pacific.
Okay, Xi winning this week, mainly just by being left alone by Donald Trump, really. The tariffs kind of being left alone with his beans, and I think geostrategically as well.
I think that the tariffs thing he's sort of won on, right? I think the tariffs, the tariff thing is more consequences of actual Chinese policy decisions, especially just basically calling America's bluff.
Yes, forcing Trump to back off.
Yeah.
Regardless, Xi moves up on our board, but unfortunately, as you can see, there is no more up for him to go. He's reached the top. That's what the little numbers indicate. They indicate how many times the person ought to have moved up if there were more space on the board. He's already 4 tiers above the top tier of the board and is being added another one with a +5 now on Xi Jinping. Before we move on to Georgina with our next one, this isn't a full advert, but I just wanted to shout out, in case you've missed it elsewhere, that we have just released a book called Assembly Required. Now, is this a full advert? Who knows? There's a borderline case that kind of, bad sentence. This is our new coffee table book, which runs through 27 of the most beautiful Parliament buildings around the world. There are tons of beautiful pictures in here. There's stories, architecture, floor plans, maps, all kinds of custom stuff that we've made for this book. I'm sure you're seeing B-roll on the screen of it right now that Scarlett has delightfully put in post. But it's a project we're really proud of, and I think it's a really interesting book that kind of runs through the history of these buildings and also just shows you the beauty inside these buildings. Georgina, you worked on the book and edited the book. Do you want to tell them kind of one compelling reason why they ought to check it out? You can also have the book if you would like.
Yeah, sure. It's beautiful and it's informative. And
what a classic combo.
What's better in life? So actually, Zach, have you even seen
No,
this?
don't get me in on this.
Man, why am I always dragged into do this bit? I mean, there's some really funky buildings in there. Like the Bangladeshi Parliament, I think we would probably all agree is just a spectacular building. I don't know what camera I'm looking at. This brutalist, very geometric, almost looks like loads of cooling towers, like a nuclear kind of situation. But you don't really think about, when we think about parliaments, we think about what happens inside them, but not the buildings where all of that stuff takes place. And I think this is a really beautiful way to take a step back and think about like the history of the architecture, what it suggests about the country, the culture. And yeah, I think my main takeaway was that I really enjoyed reading about the cultural elements that were like brought in to the building's architecture, whether it was local building materials or shapes, like the Indian Parliament chambers. One is based on the lotus, which is one of the national flower, and one is based on the peacock, which is the national animal, and things like that I think you don't often think about that clearly say something about a country's identity. That's very me.
Very good. Thank you so much. So if you want a copy for your coffee table, I can demonstrate how nice it will look on your coffee table. It will look something like this. Whoa,
wow.
Lovely. Or if you'd like to give it as a gift this Christmas to a political friend or family member, then you can go to the store now, and if you use code assembly this week only, you'll get 10% off any purchase of assembly required related products.
Can you imagine how long the real ad's going to be in the middle of this video?
Well, exactly. It's just letting people know they might not have seen it yet. It's an announcement. This isn't an advert. This is a public service broadcast.
Yeah, we're hoping.
Okay, Georgina, let's move to you because your leader is actually featured in the book. His parliament is one of the parliaments we discuss. And your winner this week is?
My winner this week is the Supreme Leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. And this is slightly broader than just the past week, but I'm using an incident in the past week to talk about this, which is that Trump has indicated that he is very keen to meet with Kim on his trip to Asia next month. Whether that will happen is, as of now, unclear. Officials are skeptical as well, but Trump is clearly keen for this to happen, which I think speaks to the global shift towards maybe more autocratic type styles of leadership. But more broadly, I think North Korea is essentially winning at the moment, in as much as Russia and China are both vying to be the top partner for North Korea, which has recently come out of its long-standing isolationist foreign policy. And so Russia is trying to be North Korea's military partner, is supplying troops. North Korea is supplying troops to Russia for use in its war against Ukraine, while Russia supplies drones, various military technologies, fuel, food, and also is supposedly helping North Korea with its nuclear or its atomic capabilities. Meanwhile, China is trying to be North Korea's top trade partner and seems to have relaxed some of its trade restrictions that it imposed on North Korea during Trump's first term. So the trade between North Korea and China in 2025 is the highest it's been since 2019. And this is good for North Korea economically. And I think, interestingly, China has also scaled back some of its talk about North Korea's nuclear capabilities. So it's previously, in official statements that have come between meetings between Xi and Kim, China has reiterated its stance against North Korea's nuclearization and has supported the denuclearization. But as of the recent statement, when the two met in September, China's removed that reference. So they're very much easing up on that, which is interesting because on the one hand, you've got Russia supporting North Korea's nuclearization and China also stepping back its opposition to it. So I think essentially there's a big story about North Korea's growing power as part of this axis, and also kind of being at the center of it, in as much as China and Russia, for different reasons, are trying to fight to be North Korea's top partner. And I think this basically speaks to North Korea's growing global influence as well.
Interesting. So Kim Jong-un moving to the very top of the board as well. A lot of action right at the very top this week. You obviously talked there about China and Russia vying for North Korean influence, North Korea's kind of growing power, and kind of fact that they're being removed from kind of diplomatic isolation a little bit. What do you think it is that kind of China and Russia are looking for from North Korea? Obviously, they're kind of a trade partner to some extent. They're able to ally with like a relatively powerful nuclear force, but North Korea is not like someone who's going to suddenly gain them a whole bunch of influence or economic power or whatever else. They're a fairly impoverished, pretty small country. What are Russia and China hoping to gain from this?
Well, I think another reason Kim is winning for me is that he knows China's not going to give up North Korea because it needs a buffer against the American troops stationed in the South, against, if North Korea's regime were to collapse and then democracy fled up north and America had a greater presence on the Korean Peninsula, that'd be really bad for China. So Kim essentially knows that China's not going to let its regime crumble. And that's the reason that China needs North Korea as well, is to buffer against American influence in the region. I think Putin clearly just wants North Korean manpower, for his war machine. And again, this is why I think it's good for Kim, is that he, on two fronts, he's got two neighbors that need him. Yeah. So he can kind of just keep going on, taking the benefits that he's getting from these partnerships and not having to worry too much about losing that, because both these countries need North Korea in a way. And another interesting point that I forgot to mention before is that in the past month, South Korea's envoy to the EU, or a senior South Korean diplomat, has recommended that the EU appoint a North Korean envoy, or begin diplomatic outreach with North Korea, I think. Sorry, I might have got this a bit wrong, but essentially, South Korea wants the EU to engage more with North Korea, because clearly North Korea is opening up to parts of the world, Russia and China most notably, but also potentially the US in the next month. And the EU is actually really on the back foot, because for so long it's condemned what's happening in North Korea, it's imposed sanctions, but it's not had any kind of relations. And now it's very much behind, and South Korea again will be trying to rally its Western allies in support of basically preventing North Korea from becoming a really key part of this anti-US axis of evil, as Scarlett referred to it as before. I
mean, the first thing I was thinking of is that, did you see the last time that Trump and Kim had that meeting? There was the best clip in geopolitics ever, which is when the meeting and Trump goes to the cameraman, "You got us all looking nice and thin," and then the cameraman immediately pans to Kim, who's just looking. If you haven't seen that clip, it's great. But the other thing I was going to say is that I think there are two, quite deep structural reasons to think that North Korea's influence globally will grow. I mean, the first is, I think something Georgia was alluding to at the very end there, is the fact that there is this sort of newfound pragmatism, especially amongst Western countries, about, or maybe a better word is ambivalence towards different political systems in other countries. Right, for a very long time, the West and the US was focused on sort of exporting democracy, nation building, all that sort of thing. I think the experience of intervention over the past couple of decades has eroded any optimism on that front. And I think the EU, you also see that in its attitude to the Gulf states, right? But all of a sudden, the EU isn't so fussed about the lack of democracy in the various Arab states or the various human rights abuses, and is more interested in some sort of trade relationship. The other thing I think is really interesting is and this hasn't really kicked off yet, but if we do see nuclear proliferation in the coming decades, I think there are reasons to think that might well happen amongst medium-sized countries. North Korea could end up playing a pretty significant role in that. I think there are reasons to think that nuclear proliferation will accelerate in the coming decades, and they're mostly to do with the fact that, well, there's just more geopolitical tension, right? But for lots of countries, the US nuclear umbrella is no longer so secure. I also think lots of middle-sized countries will look at the experience of Iran, right, where they got bombed, and they probably wouldn't have got bombed if they did have a nuke. The same way that North Korea, by the way, didn't get bombed because and during negotiations in the 90s and 2000s over its nuclear program. And they will infer from that we need our own nuclear weapon systems. And history suggests that when in eras of proliferation, those sort of middle-sized countries with experienced nuclear weapons programs sort of become the sort of keys. They basically, there's a lot of demand for nuclear expertise and technology, and because big countries like the US and China aren't really willing to take those risks, they normally stay out of the fray. But smaller countries, and in the past, most notably Pakistan, do play that role in helping those middle-sized powers develop nuclear capabilities. And you could see something similar happening in North Korea. North Korea did actually play a relatively important role in Iran's nuclear program back in the 20th century, and you could see it lending a hand in other places.
Interesting. Well, regardless, Kim is now at the top of our board. A real mixture of people up there for a mixture of reasons. Rory, let's go to you for our last winner of the week. And who is it for you?
So my winner of the week is Luis Montenegro, the Prime Minister of Portugal. This actually goes back slightly more than a week, but I'm playing catch up with him, and he hasn't moved in a long time, so I figured it'd be a good one to move. But he's a winner because just over a week ago, Portugal held local elections, and his party, the Social Democratic Party, which annoyingly and confusingly is a sort of centre-right party, despite its name, came out on top. They won pretty convincingly. Out of 308 mayoral teas up for grabs, they won 136, which is more than they won the last ones, beating the other main sort of traditional main party, the Socialist Party, which lost a number of mayoralties. But the key story from these local elections is that the far-right Chega party, which has been on a bit of a surge, especially at the general election earlier this year, really underperformed. They were hoping to win about 30 mayoralties, only ended up winning 3, which is a big sort of underperformance based on their own expectations or their own goals. Chega did still come third in terms of the vote share, but they weren't able to sort of target effectively, the sort of locations they wanted to win, and the 3 places they did win, they weren't sort of big cities. And that is a bit of a relief for the Prime Minister, because he doesn't have a majority in Parliament, as far as I can remember, and a lot of the things he's passing do rely on votes from Chega, and this sort of maybe puts them in check a bit, saying you're not on a sort of relentless rise to the top. There are limits to your success, that kind of thing. And I think there are similarities in other parts of Europe where you've got these far-right parties that have been doing very well recently, but starting to see hints that it's not an unstoppable force. In Germany, there have been a few local elections where the AfD haven't performed well, despite expectations. So for him, I think it's a sort of a good result just in the fact that his party is going to be governing more of the country, but also keeping his opponents sort of at bay. But yeah, I think going forward, the next sort of challenge for Portugal for him is the presidential election in Portugal, which is next year. They've had so many national elections in the last few years. They've had a number of sort of snap general elections. They've had European Parliament elections, these local elections, now the presidential election. That will be an interesting one, because you've got the main parties obviously competing, and Chega's leader, André Ventura, is up for his party's sort of he's his party's candidate. And some of the analysis about the local elections has been that Chega wasn't able to perform as well because he wasn't on the ballot like he was in national elections. So it would be interesting to see if they can regain momentum when he is on the ballot. But yeah, I think that's, I want to say January next year, so that'll be the next big test. But for now, he's a pretty comfortable winner.
Yeah, sounds like a win.
Do you know why they underperformed?
The main takeaway I got from a lot of other people's analysis is that they weren't able to sort of capitalize on Ventura being the sort of on the posters, the main candidate, trying to make him prime minister or leader of the opposition. I'm not really aware of many other reasons other than that. I think maybe, it is worth saying they still did come third, Chega that is, and massively increased their vote share on 2021, which I think were the last local elections. So it's not that they sort of collapsed. It's more just that it's an underperformance relative to what they were hoping for. So maybe they set their expectations too high. Or maybe after however many months it is now of Chega being the main opposition in Portugal, people have sort of thought, actually, I'm not sure I want this in my local government. Interesting.
Well, as you say, he is moving up to the lightly positive section, but there are many things to keep an eye on in Portugal. Some things beginning of next year and also throughout the year. So we'll have to keep an eye on him as the year goes on. So last week we announced our new magnet sets, which allow you to rank the world leaders on your own terms. You don't have to put up with our nonsense anymore. You can create on your own fridge, your own world leader leaderboard. And to celebrate that, each week we're playing a mini game where we request that one member of the panel ranks world leaders using the magnets, but on a different scale to our normal one. Georgina, you volunteered before the show. Are you still keen to go for it?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
amazing.
very excited.
Okay, so here is your...
Still don't have a magnetic board, Jack.
We still don't have a magnetic board. We're going to need you to pick 5 of the people featured in the magnet set.
So how are they stuck on? Is it blue tack?
It's blue tack.
Nice.
Okay. Let's go. Some of them are upside down.
Some of them are upside down.
Let's go for Mette Frederiksen,
Yeah.
You put them under pressure there.
Pedro Sanchez,
Could you pass them down?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Donald Tusk, please.
Okay.
Let's go for the other Donald T as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, very nice.
Nice.
And then, I want to choose someone Rory didn't choose last time.
Go Orban.
I was going to say, yeah, and Orban.
Sorry.
Pretty
Okay.
European. Plus Trump.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so those are your 5 leaders.
Oh, sorry, that was
now
exciting.
we need to decide what category you're ranking them on. Oh, okay, fine.
What's he drawing?
So my drawing's not very good. So you're going to have to imagine a little bit. But you are going on a road trip with these 5 world leaders. You are also in the car too. And your job is to assign where each of them should sit based on where you want to be and also intergroup dynamics. You have the 2 front seats, the 3
wow.
seats in the back, and then you got to put one of them in the boot.
In the boot?
Yeah.
Who's driving?
It's up to you.
As in, so what? Are we? Obviously, we're
yourself
British,
as
so
well.
we're right-hand
Oh, do you want
drive.
me to draw the wheel on there too? So
I don't want to put someone.
Sanchez should be driving. I'm not. You know,
The Spain, they drive on the left.
but that's not what I've said. But because
There's
he
the
did
wheel.
a part
did
of
a-
his
yeah,
campaign
did a little
tour
road
was him
trip.
he drove around Spain in like a very, I can't remember what brand of car
It
it
was like a Vauxhall, not Vauxhall, like a Peugeot or something.
Yeah.
Surely
a
it
little
was-
thing. Like
surely
a
it was
Seat
Seat.
Yeah,
or
it was
something.
Seat. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And it was like a very sort of family car, and it was like a Man of the People redemption arc.
So
He
I am
should
one of these.
drive.
people.
You got to choose a spot for yourself too.
Okay, I'm gonna put Donald Tusk in the driver's seat
Whoa.
because.
That's what tried my hardest.
Oh, what did you say? That I should put
Pedro.
Sanchez.
Did you not hear that? Because he did.
No,
He did
I wasn't listening.
he did when he got for his second one at the presidency. He or prime ministership. He did like a tour around Spain in like his family car.
Oh wow!
Yeah, where he
Yeah.
just used to drive around.
Chinese
Oh,
people.
that's a good bit of lore. See, we're learning through this
We
game
are
as well,
learning.
and I wouldn't have learned that if we weren't playing this
It's
mini game.
important.
So
It's very important.
so thanks for sharing, Zach.
Twice.
Twice. So Donald Tusk is driving
Yeah.
because I think he's a steady hand.
Okay.
But he's definitely going to get in a spat with one of them, which is pretty unsafe.
I think you need someone sensible on the navigation next to
Yes,
Tusk as
true.
well.
Yeah.
They can't be fighting because then the
That
car will
vibe's in the
crash.
front. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Mette Frederiksen
Okay.
is going to go.
Are you
next
giving
to,
her the aux cable too, or is someone in the back controlling the music?
She can go on the aux because I think she'd be receptive to requests from
Okay.
the rest
You
of the
know,
car.
some, like,
Yeah,
Scandi-
she wouldn't
Scandi
commandeer it.
Okay.
She's a bit of an iron lady. I think she might do some commandeering.
That's a good front row, I think.
I'm
Oh
wondering
no!
who you've left yourself to sit next to.
Oh no!
Yeah, you're in the back.
You're going to
of
be
the
wedged
boot.
between Victor Orban.
Can you imagine how loud Trump would be in the boot? What's going on? Why am I in the boot? What have I done? I'm the best. I should be in the front seat.
Now I'm realizing I took this step by step instead of thinking about the bigger picture.
Yeah. So you're left with Trump, Orban, and who else?
Pedro.
Well, I know
Sanchez.
I want to sit next to Sanchez. Out of the
Okay,
three of
you
them.
can sit
So
by the
I
window,
have to,
But
and
you could-
ideally I won't be next to one of the others. So I'll put myself. I'd quite like to talk to those two though.
You have to keep in mind, and that Orban and Tusk are going to be furious at each other. They really don't
God,
get on.
I really not
Don't
not
put,
thought about
okay,
this.
put Orban behind Mette Frederiksen, otherwise he'll be kicking the back of
Yeah, that's,
Tusk's chair
That's-
and he'll
that's very
crash.
wise.
Yeah. Okay. Good suggestion. Thanks,
I'd actually
team.
want to put in the boot.
Orban's going there.
Why don't you just
I'm.
plonk him in the boot.
Tie him up.
Plonk him in the boot. He's
The
got.
EU is metaphorically trying to tie him up and put him in the boot at the moment, to be fair.
I'd put Orban in the boot.
I'll sit
can't put
behind
Trump in the
Tusk.
Okay,
So I'll have
yeah.
that one next to Sanchez.
Trump's in the boot.
And unfortunately,
Wow.
I'm going to put Trump in the boot, which
Do you wanna pass
could
it
go
over?
really badly.
Honestly, you wouldn't survive that drive.
Okay. Let us know in the comments what you think. Do you want to run us through it one more time, Georgina? I'll hold it up if you want to cut
so
to
we've
camera
got
3.
Donald Tusk driving, because we're British, so it's right-hand drive. Mette Frederiksen on navigation/aux.
Yeah.
Viktor Orban in the disruptors chair, but not too disruptive because he's not sitting behind the driver. Sanchez in the middle as a kind of softening, buffer. Myself behind Tusk next to Sanchez, and then unfortunately Trump in the boot.
He looks unhappy.
He does look grumpy with it, but at least he can entertain himself. There'll probably be some toys in there.
Give him an iPad.
Yeah.
Okay, that was Georgina's ranking.
You're going to make a great parent, by the way.
If you want to play along at home, if you want to rank the world leaders by that metric or any other, then you want to pick up a pack of the World Leader Leaderboard magnets. There are 2 sets, the original starter set, which includes 10 world leaders, as well as the arrows that you need to rank them with if you're doing a more traditional ranking. There we go. And then there's also the European expansion, which I think Georgina taps into pretty hard there. I don't think Mette Frederiksen's in the base pack, unfortunately.
If you also really hated that section, you should just buy all of the magnets. Then we can never do it again.
Yeah.
So head to the store to pick up that, or assembly required. And if you buy both packs and use code LEADERS, you'll get 25% off both. That's if you buy the European edition and the standard edition.
And if you want to play a version of that minigame on your own car, you can label each door of the car with the face of the person that you would like to be sitting there.
Or just stick the magnets on the outside of your car.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if sticking Donald Trump on the back of your
if
car
I were
is going to
stuck
get
in a traffic jam and I saw Trump on the boot in front, I would have that would make my day. I'd have feelings.
I don't have to be positive. Okay, enough of that. And I swear we won't promote anything for the rest of the episode. Let's move to our audience suggestion next. Okay, so every week we let you decide one person who either add to the board or move on the board based on your comments in the previous episode. This time we have Belgian Prime Minister
Bart de Wever.
Come on, you've thrown me under the bus, Scarlett. No one would have known it was Georgina saying it and me moving my lips. How do we say his name?
Bart de Wever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Can I move my mouth and you say it?
You should do that in regular videos, to be honest.
That's good. Yeah. So it's Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you. Who is new to the board, which means he will either be added to the lightly positive or lightly negative section. It's up to us to decide where we put him. Rory, let's start with you. Do you think Bart de Wever is a winner or a loser?
I think that Bart de Wever should probably be a loser. Like all Belgian governments, he runs a coalition that is pretty broad and not a very easy one to manage, and he's still currently struggling to agree on a budget for next year. Belgium is subject to the EU's what's it called, excessive deficit procedure, because it needs to bring down its sort of debt. So he went into these budget negotiations looking to sort of find 10 billion euros. That has now been sort of brought down to like a 6 billion euro target because of how difficult it is to find any agreement. You've got some parties that have ruled out any tax rises, which would mean he's going to have to look at cuts and sort of, freezing of thresholds and things. Whereas other parties want tax rises. It's a pretty unenviable job. So yeah, there's nothing yet. They've had lots of sort of marathon meetings of their cabinet, and still struggling. So I think he's a loser for now.
Georgina?
I think also loser. I think Nadia wrote a script on this about how Palestine was a very divisive issue for the Belgian coalition. And they had lots of very public infighting over whether to recognize Palestinian state, which I believe they have done now.
I don't know. I think they said something like, I think they said it was even more like conditional than the UK's one. I think they said they would sort of informally do it. But I'm not 100% sure. Someone can probably correct us.
I mean, the fact they're in some kind of weird negotiated liminal conditional state does suggest that there's disagreement at least.
And Belgium saw huge protests over that as well. So I guess loser for that reason.
Zach, do you agree? Loser?
I'm convinced, loser.
Okay, so Bart de Wever is being added to the board, and we're adding him to the lightly negative section.
Good suggestion.
Good suggestion.
I'm surprised he wasn't on there already.
Yeah, me too. Will he last the purge, though? Probably. Belgium, probably. We'll find out next week. Anyway, let's move on to our losers of the week. Zach, let's start with you. Who is your loser this week?
Oh, my loser of the week is, and this is a bit of a boring one, but I'm going to go for it. I moved him up last time I was on. I'm moving him down this time. It's UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
People are going to hate that.
Yeah. There's basically two reasons. I'll do this very, very quickly. The first is that once again, basically the UK's borrowing figures have come in well above target for September. I think in the whole year it's about 7 billion above target. That makes what is going to be a painful budget even more painful. And I think this is especially bad because I really just don't feel like, as a Brit, I don't feel like they've rolled this out at all, right? I don't think people really know that there are big tax rises coming. I think everyone sort of knows things might get a bit tougher. But if they want to, they want to both cover the budget deficit basically, or the black hole, whatever they call it. But then they also want to add more of a buffer so that we don't have to keep on doing these sort of ad hoc impromptu budgets, right? They want to add a sort of £20 billion buffer, which means that even if the OBR forecasts change, they won't have to do a sudden impromptu budget in the future. So this can be really quite painful. And I don't think they've sort of laid out the political groundwork for that. The other thing is something we've talked about in actually a recent podcast and over on the UK channel, which is the rise of the Greens under Zach Polansky. I think sometimes that can be overstated, but I nonetheless think that basically it's not just that Zach Polansky is clearly a better, more effective political leader than his predecessors. I think it's also that the Corbyn Sultana party is continuing to crumble. And that means there is now a sort of relatively well consolidated left-wing alternative to Labour. And the latest YouGov polls put them at 15%, which is really quite something, right? The Greens normally not too long ago.
Level with Labour.
No, not on that YouGov poll. It's
level with the Lib Dems, though, right?
Yeah, level with the Lib Dems, and they're not far away from Labour.
Labour 17, I think. Oh no, sorry.
Yeah,
why am
they're basically all on the same sort of level there. But I think that is pretty ruinous for Labour, especially because they can do more unpopular things in the very near future, right? Yeah. I think the one tiny silver lining for Starmer is the mini reform implosion we've had recently. There have been, especially at the local council level, there have been a whole lot of infighting. There was a Guardian expose where they were all shouting at each other on a Zoom call. And then the Doge guys have quietly admitted that they can't Doge any of the council, which is unsurprising.
Councils aren't flush with money.
Councils have no money in the first place, and you've appointed a 19-year-old to Doge it.
It's almost as if Google could have told us that before they got elected.
Also, Trump did the same thing and then just admitted he couldn't do it. Why did we think? Yeah. Anyway, so that's the one tiny silver lining. That latest YouGov poll, for instance, puts Reform on 26%, which is still well above Labour, but it is down a couple of points from where they were. But yeah, so I think that's the one tiny silver lining, but I do think in the aggregate things are looking pretty miserable for him.
It does sound it. And it sounds like with the budget yet to come, there's more unpopularity down the road. Do you think
they've rolled out the groundwork? Because
I think they have a little bit on like the idea that they will backtrack on their promise of no tax rises. Like I think, as you say, that is kind of something that people have come to terms with the fact that like that isn't true anymore. That if you're right, and I think you are, that the magnitude of those tax rises is more than just kind of like fiddling. It's not just going to be a bit of fuel duty and like a percent on national insurance. I don't think people are ready for that.
No, same. Okay, good. We're agreed on that.
Especially if I think politically engaged people have been, I mean, I think they've been aware that it's coming before Labour have even sort of started to admit it. But for most of the population, I think it's going to be a bit of a
shock.
Yeah,
that is a really good point. Yeah, I think and it would continue a trend of what we've seen from Labour before, which is just doing something seemingly out of nowhere, like the digital ID announcement, again, which was massively unpopular, just because no groundwork, as Zach says, had been laid beforehand. Yeah. And if people don't like bad things, but what they don't like more than bad things is bad things that come out of nowhere. Yeah. So
maybe this is way too much for me to ask, but I have this sort of fantasy that they should go on TV now, basically, and say, look, here are the tax things I'm gonna do for your average person, right? This means you'll have to save this much for the next year. This is how much you're going to lose in the next tax year. Just, I'm giving you a heads up. Try and plan against that, right? Maybe save a bit more here, make some plans for next year.
Cancel your Netflix.
Yeah, but shocking everyone with a couple of P on income tax. It's not going to be that, but something along those lines, right? I just think is not good politics.
Lindsay Hoyle would really be unhappy if they did that.
Yeah.
If they went on TV.
Yeah, fine. Tell the House of Commons first, whatever. But then you know what I mean. I think that I just think it's a miscalculation to think that it's politically easier to shock everyone in a couple of months' time, as opposed to sort of say quite explicitly it's going to be quite tough.
Although you could say the French example has been the opposite approach, where Bayrou and others have tried for a long time to make the case to the public via their YouTube podcast series or interviews that this is going to be really tough, that we have to make compromises, and that also hasn't gone down.
But the French case is perfectly disanalogous in the sense that the issue with the French one is that he doesn't have a functioning majority. Keir Starmer has a big functioning majority, right? If he said, look, we're going to do this, he'd get it through. That's not the issue.
But I suppose Georgina's point isn't can he do it? It's the fact that in France, they've been trying to make this argument, and even with all that noise, it's not convincing anyone. So you're right; it wouldn't be a shock. But like, even with all of the publicity in the world, would they be able to convince people it was good? Probably not.
Yeah, no, I think but the issue there is that either way it's bad, right? Yeah. I think it's the least bad option here.
Sure.
My instinct is that the least bad. It's like the equivalent is, if Beirut spent all that time on TV being like, we have to do this, and then eventually got it through, it would be very unpopular. But the alternative is Macron forcing the same policies through with the constitutional amendment at the Article 49.3, a couple of months later. That would be even more unpopular, right? If he said, no warning, we're going to take away your 2 public holidays, and then just done it. I mean, he would be strung up, in the Elysee within no time.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Regardless, Starmer moving down from negative to very negative. He's back home at the bottom of the board where he belongs.
He belongs.
Well,
it's a bit
that's
partisan,
hard,
isn't it? Yeah.
But not even where he. But okay, yeah, fair. I didn't even mean it like that. I just meant he has resided at the bottom of the board nearly the entirety.
I was
going to
say if it comes to the summary of moves at the end of the year, it'd be interesting to see what proportion of weeks Starmer has spent on
almost
the bottom
every
row.
single one.
Because it feels that way, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, Georgina, let's move to you. Who is your loser this week?
My lose this week is the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. This is because last week the German coalition had their first major public spat over a conscription drive, or a way into potential future conscription. And so the coalition, as we know, is made up of the centre-right Christian Democratic Union and the centre-left Social Democratic Party. And there's been a lot of disagreement within those between those two parties about how to achieve this goal of increasing the German army's forces from the current levels of about 180,000 to 260,000, which is a big increase. And the CDU has been pushing for a path towards conscription. That doesn't mean conscription now, but it means provisions in this military service bill that would allow Germany to go for some kind of conscription system if the volunteer scheme doesn't bring enough new recruits in. But the SPD is very opposed to this and wants a purely voluntary scheme. Last week, the two parties had agreed on a provision for a lottery system whereby young men would be called up for compulsory military service if the voluntary scheme didn't bring enough new recruits in. But at the last minute, the SPD Defence Minister Boris Pistorius supposedly torpedoed the deal, rejected this element, and also the fact that the bill had removed a mandatory questionnaire for everyone turning 18. Pistorius argued that this would mean the Bundeswehr had no idea who was available to serve in a crisis. And so this caused about 48 hours of chaos in German politics before the bill ended up going to Parliament. And it's now gone to Parliament without this lottery element. So that's not being debated. But the fact that this caused such a public row is not a good look for the coalition, because they came in and they, in their coalition agreement, said they promised that they would prove that parties of the Democratic Centre could work together, essentially saying to people, you don't have to have the far right, you can have us and we'll be stable and we'll work really well. And already this is cracks are starting to show, which you would expect. But alongside that, Merz's CDU party has, until this point, done reasonably well to fend off the rise of the AfD in the polls. The CDU had been ahead for a while, but in the past few weeks, we've seen a tightening. And in some polls, the AfD is now a point or two ahead of the CDU again. So again, this is something that Merz will be keeping an eye on. And I guess my final reason for Merz being a loser is that I think he's lost his kind of mojo around defense and NATO and Trump and pro-Europeanism that he had when he first came in. As far as I'm aware, I haven't heard any big bombastic statements from Merz in recent months. And he really came into office being very anti-Trump or skeptical of Trump and very pro-European. And I think that has washed away a bit in recent months.
Yeah.
I do think that's a really interesting point. I hadn't thought about that. But I think in retrospect, so before coming to office and actually during the campaign, Merz has always been a massive Atlanticist, right? Very, very pro-NATO, very, very pro-America, thinks that the EU needs to rejig its regulations to be a bit more like the US. And that massive pivot we saw literally in his acceptance speech, basically, where he said, Donald Trump is an unprecedented threat to European security. I think more and more it looks like basically that was a little bit of a ploy to justify his big borrowing spree, which he also said he wasn't going to do during the campaign, right? And that his Atlantis instincts have sort of kicked it back in slightly. Were you done apart from that?
Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. The one other thing I think that I actually wanted to do a video on this and I didn't quite get around to it, but the other thing that I think is difficult for Merz, I don't know if people have been keeping track of this, but the Nord Stream 2 stuff, have people seen that? It's just a little bit of context. Obviously, someone blew up the Nord Stream pipeline that supplies gas from Russia straight to Germany. And this is a bit of lore for long-time viewers, but like when that happened, we were at NATO and we asked
Munich Security
Conference a couple of months later, and we asked Mitch McConnell
if he did it.
And he said no.
Imagine if that's how we got him.
But yeah, I know. But basically, originally, everyone was assumed it was, and well, people were sort of immediately like, it's a bad thing. It must have been Russia. And that never really made sense why Russia blew up its own pipeline. And then people thought maybe it's the Americans. And the most recent evidence suggests it probably was some sort of Ukrainian outfit, right? And a Ukrainian man suspected of doing it was in Poland, and the German authorities asked for him to be extradited, and a Polish judge refused it. But under pressure from the Polish government, and this was also a decision that was then celebrated publicly by Donald Tusk, the Polish Prime Minister, who said Germany should stop investigating this. And when a country is under attack, I think he said, it has the right to self-defense, which is basically a tacit admission that Ukraine did it.
Yeah.
And this puts the German government in a bit of a difficult spot, right? Because Ukraine blew up your pipeline.
Yeah.
And so far the official line from the foreign minister has been like this is a sort of Polish internal affairs, right? It was decision made by a Polish judge. We're not going to push back against it, but I don't know if that really flies, especially when Tusk is out there celebrating it.
Yeah.
And both the AfD and Sarah Wagenknecht, who ran that sort of Sarah Wagenknecht party that people thought might do quite well but ended up doing very badly at the elections, have both come out to say, what do you mean? This is internal affairs. Basically, we're nearing the point of the investigation where we can conclude that Ukraine blew up our pipeline, and you're saying we're just going to stop because Poland told us to.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a tough one. I think that story is sort of slightly underreported. It's a pretty crazy story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was about to say, I think that story, but also the wider German-Polish split is massively underreported. Yeah. We did make a video of it a few months ago. That was specifically about irregular migration issues as well on the Polish-German border. So there's now at least two strands to this Polish-German split. There's the migration.
Also the reparations issue, which is
long-standing.
Yeah. But the Polish government is really trying to force it, and the German government made things worse by the Polish government asked for some massive sum of reparations for World War II, and the German government I think made things worse by offering 200 million euros, which is, it might sound it's quite a lot to me, but in the context of that particular debate, it's almost offensively small.
Yeah. Okay. Issues across the board for Merz then. Moving down from lightly positive to the neutral zone. Rory, close us out. Who is your loser this week?
So my loser of the week is Turkey's President Erdogan. And it's not for anything that happened in Turkey, but it is what happened in Northern Cyprus, the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, which is an unrecognized state, a state only recognized by Turkey, that had a presidential election on Sunday. It resulted in a landslide victory for a pro-unification candidate, Tufan Erhman, who wants to go back to negotiations on reunifying Cyprus, which has been partitioned for more than 50 years now between a Greek Cypriot South, which internationally we know as Cyprus, the Republic of Cyprus, and Northern Cyprus, the sort of Turkish Cypriot breakaway state, effectively. For the last 5 years, the incumbent president of Northern Cyprus, a guy called Ersin Tatar, who's a big ally of Erdogan, has been sort of pushing the Turkish line, which is that they want a two-state solution on Cyprus, effectively. They want international recognition of Northern Cyprus and no reunification. And that's what Erdogan's been pushing as well. But the incumbent president, Tatar, lost heavily. He won about 36% of the vote, while Erdogan won, I think, 63, 64%. So a massive victory for that, the idea of returning to talks and potential reunification in the future. I think why this is particularly interesting is it comes off the back of earlier this year protests in Northern Cyprus against new rules in schools that locals sort of perceived as introducing Islam into the education system, and they saw that as the influence of Turkey on Northern Cyprus, which is Turkish Cypriot, it is Muslim, but it is largely secular. So it does that, and these results does sort of show that maybe Erdogan and his influence on Northern Cyprus is not as sort of well liked as it might seem from the outside. Erdogan, to be fair to him, responded very graciously to the loss of his guy and the victory of the unification candidate. But he doesn't have much room for maneuver here, because if it was 51 to 49%, he might be a bit more a bit less gracious about it. But the landslide victory really suggests that is the direction of travel that the Northern Cypriots want. But also against that backdrop, Erdogan is trying to get access to the EU's sort of 150 billion euro defense fund. And to do that, he's going to need the support of EU member states like Greece, like Cyprus. And if he sort of pushes too hard against a return to unification talks, he could see himself frozen out of that. So he's having to tread fairly carefully. And that's why he's a loser this week.
Interesting. He's moving down then from the neutral space down to lightly negative. He's someone who's moved around that kind of middle bit quite a lot recently. There is a full video on this on the TLDR EU channel if you'd like to learn more. Because, it's an interesting story about the kind of dynamic of Turkey, Northern Cyprus, the Republic of Cyprus, Europe, etc. So, definitely worth keeping an eye on. And as you say, worth checking out the video too.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, to close, let's do our ultimate winners and ultimate losers of the week. Okay, so the way this works is each week we vote for who we think the ultimate winner and ultimate loser is out of the people we've discussed. If we have 3 out of 4 of us in agreement on who that person is, then they move an additional spot up or down on the board. We're going to start with our ultimate winner. Your options are Xi Jinping, Montenegro, or Kim Jong-un. I don't know if I do stand by this, but I've written something.
It's not I don't think it's an easy one.
It's
either.
a pretty difficult
This
one.
week.
I'm changing my mind. But I'll let you go, Rory.
Okay.
Who is your ultimate winner this week?
My ultimate winner is Kim Jong-un. And parts of me wanted to go for Xi, but I just thought, I can't give him that +6. Just he's got to work for it. But Kim Jong-un, something, I don't know the exact details of this, but I remember some point in the last month, I think it was the Vietnamese president visited North Korea and met with Kim. And it was like the first time a Vietnamese leader had gone to North Korea in like 30 years or something. And that is that sort of extra thing that Georgina was talking about this sort of emerging from diplomatic isolation. And that does, I think that trend is a really interesting one. And very good for Kim. So he's my winner.
Georgina?
For the same reasons, I've also gone for Kim. I also think, unless we're thinking of the same person, I think there was also the first Indonesian relations between Indonesia and Kim also in the past month or few months. which is again, part of this interesting dynamic.
Annoyingly, I've gone for Luis Montenegro.
Okay, but it's 3 quarters, right? So
It's
there's
3
still a
quarters.
chance.
It's still a chance.
I'm sold. And if you zoom out, right, I think Kim is doing very, very well and probably slightly better than Luis Montenegro. But I'm a sucker for an election victory, or like in an election victory. And that was in the last week.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I agree with Zach. I also went Montenegro.
50-50.
Kind of same reason. And also, I think him being only in the lightly positive section, I don't mind him getting a bump to full positive. But anyway, nothing happens. No movement. There is not enough agreement.
I'm actually quite happy with that.
Sorry?
It's quite a good outcome, I think.
Yeah. Can we reach an agreement on the ultimate loser, though? Your options are... Do you want to do it again, Georgina?
Bart de Wever.
Keir Starmer, Erdogan, or Merz. Okay, Rory, who is your ultimate loser this week?
I really feel I'm kicking him while he's down, but I've gone for Keir Starmer. I just think this past week in particular has been really bad.
Yeah.
Like there's not been any good news for him. The Green Party thing, I think.
We forgot the Maccabee Tel Aviv thing.
Well, that's what I was about to say.
Sorry.
The Green Party thing, on the one hand, I think that Labour have demonstrated they don't understand why the Green Party is surging. And like Zach just mentioned, the fact that Keir Starmer inserted himself very cynically into like a policing decision that massively, I think, backfired on him
Also the
in
China
regards to the
spies thing.
Oh yeah,
Which is still unresolved.
it's actually so.
I've actually changed my
It's really
mind.
terrible.
No, you can't. I'm afraid you can't.
Well, that's giving that away. But yeah, I think it's just been I think it's been a
There's
pretty
been more
catastrophic
reasons
week.
than we can remember.
Yeah,
He's already at the bottom of the board, though.
yeah.
Just text someone this morning about how just frustratingly, I mean, this sounds partisan now, but how frustratingly rubbish they are.
Yeah.
They're so rubbish.
Georgina, who do you think is the most rubbish?
I really wish I'd gone for Starmer now because there is actually so much
Yeah.
The
just
longer
from
you
the
talk
past
about
week.
it, and it's crazy how the Maccabi thing was so frustrating
And you
and
forget-
stupid.
Also the Palestine action decision against the government was last week as well. As in to give them a second hearing.
Oh,
or...
God, it's exhausting.
There's so many bad
It's
things you
exhausting.
forget half the bad things.
Yeah.
So it's always a
But
bad
you
sign.
went for Georgina.
But unfortunately I didn't think that hard and I just liked Rory's argument, so I went for Erdogan.
Too compelling. That's
I know,
probably-
it was a
Isn't
really
it an
interesting-
election as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a really interesting story, I think, and the fact that it was a landslide defeat of Erdogan's candidate makes him a big loser for me.
And I'm going to ruin it even further. I went for Merz.
Oh.
But I just think that, the longer you talk about Merz as well, the more his star has fallen,
Yeah.
right? The allure has just worn off.
I was
so
also
quickly.
deciding on Merz for a bit.
I also went Merz.
Yeah,
I think I was
okay.
convinced by what Georgina said about the kind of centrist pitch around like we can work together. This is a viable option against the kind of further left and right. And I think that is looking less plausible and it's beginning to look kind of like a bit pretty bad.
I wish
And
it was
considering he
Starmer
is
now,
only in neutral, I thought we could do with bumping him down a bit
Yeah,
further
I
than
thought that as
but
well. He could go in the bottom
Anyway, what a waste of time. No additional movement at all. No agreement. I mean, we did think of more reasons why Starmer's struggling than the ones we already listed at the kind of first time round. So I guess you got that. Anyway, that is the end of the episode. Let us know who you want to see us either add or move next time in the audience section. The top comment will be the one we select. And I think this week it was one without that many likes. Is that right?
I think it got like 30 something likes.
Okay.
Everyone
got-
was talking about the magnets.
Everyone was so distracted by the
Oh,
magnets.
And
that's
to be
great.
fair, I think they're going to be talking about Georgina's road trip.
Yeah, maybe
more than-
so.
Yeah.
But yeah, make sure to comment who you want us to add or move, and also to vote on other people's ones so we can
And come
choose.
back for the purge, right?
And come back for the
Yeah.
Halloween purge. Absolutely right. We'll see you then. Cool.
Cute little wave, guys.